Welcome to our Christmas special, Are You a Critical Thinker? I'm your host, Vanna Smith. Today's guest speaker will be Bradford Smith, an upcoming and young entrepreneur who is currently pursuing his Master's of Business Administration at Brenau University. Join us in a round of applause as we welcome Bradford Smith.
Hi, Vanna. How are you today?
Hi, how are you this evening?
I'm doing well.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being our guest speaker.
Of course.
Of course, before we start, Bradford, go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm currently working at Wells Fargo. I'm a banker there. I've been with Wells Fargo for about 2.5 years now. I'm an up-and-coming entrepreneur. I'm hoping to after my career with Wells Fargo, hopefully move into more of a corporate sector. And actually, after I leave Wells Fargo, I'd like to own my own business, kind of give back to the community a little bit. Nonprofits are really my passion. Just giving back to those who've been a little bit less fortunate than me growing up. So that's just a little bit about myself.
Awesome. Well, you are in for a treat, audience, today as we talk to Bradford Smith about critical thinking. Question number 1. So how has your past educational experience affected you and your critical thinking skills?
Well, education has been a big part of my life. My family, my parents were both educators, and it's something that's made a big impact, especially after leaving high school. I wasn't very involved when it came to extracurricular activities, sports, things of that nature. So after I transcended past high school and moving to my education undergrad in West Georgia, I was a lot more active as far as organizations on campus, community service. So those increased my critical thinking skills, overcoming objections and, just being able to get out there and talk to people and put my name out there. So, just the teachers and the individuals that I encountered going to West Georgia really helped my critical thinking skills.
Awesome. And I understand you're a graduate of the University of West Georgia. What class?
Summer of 2010.
Awesome. What degrees did you obtain?
I got my master's in management, not master's, my bachelor's in management. I'm working on my master's now at Brenau University. I'm getting my master's in management. So I'm really excited about that.
Awesome. And leading into another question, what was your favorite undergraduate class that actually made you utilize those critical thinking skills?
Well, one of the classes that I really enjoyed was it was called the Art of Selling. And with that class, it taught me how to sell different products as well as sell myself.
Very important.
So, when you're able to sell, being that, I want to go into sales eventually, and that's part of owning your own business, selling yourself and selling your product. So that's one class that really stuck with me, and I've used with me, going forward in my career here at Wells Fargo.
Awesome. Are there any critical thinkers that you idolize or emulate?
One critical thinker that really stands out to me is Nelson Mandela. I've studied him a little bit throughout my college career. Just the oppression that he faced, trying and also being the first African American president of South Africa. It was a feat that nobody really thought would ever be obtained, especially by an African American male. And he was beat down and oppressed, and he was even in jail for 30 plus years because of the ideals that he stood for. And with the way that the world is kind of, it seems like it's deteriorating a little bit. People are all the racial riots and things that have been going on. I think a lot of people need to look back at some of the critical thinking skills that he brought forward and kind of emulate those and kind of move the country and your thinking in general forward.
Very, very awesome answer. Has there been anyone in your family that has had a hand in the view of your critical thinking skills?
Well, one of the things two of the people that really put those ideals of critical thinking in my head were my mother and father. With my mother and father, they weren't brought up in the best of conditions. They both were educators, and they both really started their careers, later on in their lives, as opposed to some individuals. My father was in the military, so he didn't really start his career till a little bit later on in life. But being both educators, they instilled in me the importance of education and the importance of selling yourself and being able to use those critical thinking skills to make sure you get ahead in life. Because as we see nowadays, if you do not have the educational skills at your fingertips, it's very hard to progress and move forward and overcome the obstacles of life.
How much do you think college and post-education experience play into critical thinking and just being able to think outside of the box?
Well, post-secondary education is extremely important. And when you're in grade school and high school and things of that nature, it's more about facts. They treat you, math and reading skills and things of that nature. But when you move more into post-secondary education, they teach you more of how to think and how to expand your knowledge beyond that of taking a standardized test. So that's one thing that I've really grown and gotten from my education and of trying to obtain my master's and also my undergraduate degree. And that has definitely helped me in my career going forward.
Awesome. What is one obstacle that you have come across that has inhibited your critical thinking skills?
Well, one thing that's kind of stood out to me is I had a situation a few years ago where I lost my job, and I kind of I didn't know where to turn. I was a little bit down on myself and wondering, where my career was going forward, kind of what I did wrong. And sometimes that's not always the case. It's not about what you did wrong. It's just coming up with new and inventive ways to revitalize your views on life and, your career. And that's where those great critical thinking skills come into play. Just determining what you're good at, what you like, and 9 times out of 10, there's somebody out there that shares those views with you. So that's important to make sure that you move forward in life.
Throw a curveball at you. So how important do you think critical thinking and brand development are? Do you think the two go hand in hand?
I certainly do. Brand development for your, whether it's for your business or whether it's your own personal brand. You want to make sure that you have those critical thinking skills to separate your brand from another's. A Burger King is the same Burger King as another one across the country. But if you have those service skills and you have those people skills, it separates that particular restaurant from another. So you want to make sure that you can always be building your brand. Whatever you're doing, whether you're talking to people, whether you're trying to actually sell your product, you always want to be thinking about your particular brand and making sure that it stays strong.
Awesome. One of the great thinkers that you have studied thus far, tell me who's your favorite and how you are most like them and why.
Well, one person that I've really studied is Sigmund Freud. He kind of stood out to me because of the circle of people that he had around him. He was his family kind of put him on a pedestal almost, and that kind of helped him realize his potential, and realize that he was one of the great thinkers of the 20th century, and kind of propelled him forward to help himself be one of those great thinkers. And also, to go along with that, he adapted himself to every situation. There were times where, much like myself, there were times where he would just sit back and observe. He wasn't always the most vocal person in the world, but he knew when to sit back, when to observe, and also when to get out there, when to shake hands, when to introduce himself, and progress forward. And those are great critical thinking skills that you need as a person to progress. Not all the time you need to be out there and be bold, because sometimes they can be off-putting to people. So you want to make sure that you kind of know when to hold them and when to fold them sometimes. And that's one thing that I really respected about the critical thinking skills of Freud.
Interesting. Never studied Freud, but I probably picked that up this evening. And on that same note, flip sides, who are you least like and why?
One individual, although he was an excellent creative thinker, was Gandhi. One thing that kind of stood out to me about Gandhi was the fact that when he was younger, his family kind of, because they were so strict in that era, it kind of caused him to act out a little bit. Sometimes he kind of let the emotions of situations get the best of him. And as a critical thinker, you have to be able to keep your emotions in check, and know when to act accordingly. Now, Gandhi was a very moral individual, and he also always took the peaceful road of life. And sometimes, as we've seen, peacefulness is not always the best answer to handle a situation, and even to progress as a critical thinker. Sometimes you have to kind of grab the bull by the horns, if you will. So being that he was such a docile person, a lot of times people didn't respect him as much. And also one aspect, kind of to go along with the critical thinking, but just the person he was in general. A lot of times he put himself before others, and that, to me, that's not really the kind of person that I am. I'm more of a I'll lay down for you if you're doing something progressive. And there was a situation in which I read that he actually left his wife and his child to pursue the dreams of himself, whether and it's important to a lot of times progress those, especially if you have children, ahead of yourself. So that's one aspect that kind of was a little off-putting about Gandhi, but he was a great thinker.
Very interesting. And our last question, ladies and gentlemen, for the evening: what makes you one of the brightest and biggest up-and-coming critical thinkers?
Well, one of those things that kind of makes me an up-and-coming great thinker is the fact that I don't really like to take no for an answer. And that's an important thing. You always have to be pushing yourself forward. Never becoming complacent. So that's one of the biggest things. I try to tell people. Always be looking for the newest and greatest thing. Because the more you become complacent, you're missing out on a lot of your potential. So as I pursue my master's and graduate, and hopefully in the very near future, begin to start my own business. I wanna instill that in myself and build my brand to always be pursuing more. So that's one thing that I believe that makes me a very effective critical thinker.
Awesome. Awesome, awesome. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you are definitely in for a show this evening. Mr. Smith, I want to personally thank you,
Thank you
for
so
coming
much.
and being our special guest this evening, and just giving us a deeper and a greater understanding of what it takes to be a critical thinker and the mindset of a critical thinker. Join us next week on Are You a Critical Thinker with our special guest, Tom Cruise. And signing off, this is Vanna Smith. Our motto is, you aren't thinking unless it's outside of the box. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
How do I pause it?